Yeah, my name is Michael Woods. I'm the Community Sport Inclusion Coordinator at Swimming Australia, and my role primarily revolves around looking at creating opportunities for people with disability to get involved in the sport. And that involves working in the disability community as well as working with the swimming community. Swimming Australia operates in a federated sports structure, so the local club will affiliate to a state or territory swimming association, and then that association in turn will then affiliate to the national body. So in doing so, we actually have about 1,100 clubs operating nationally, and Swimming Australia actually manages a national database of all those clubs, which allows us to get direct access to them. So we work collaboratively with our state swimming associations to deliver national programs directly to our clubs, and those national programs include things like our Go Club branded set of programs, which is about building the capacity through providing resources and assistance direct to clubs to help them, operate a lot better. So the inclusion checklist is essentially a survey that was delivered to our swimming clubs nationally. It looks at collecting information from clubs about basic membership information. Do you have people with disability in the club and what roles do they perform, as well as looking at things like physical access around the facility, what their club activities and environments like, and also what they do in terms of communicating the opportunities they have to members and also to potential members. So initially it was devised for, two main purposes. One was as a resource for clubs, where they can do a bit of a self-assessment on what they're actually doing in terms of inclusive practice. But on the other side of that was as a research tool. Swimming Australia can then use it to help target its programs, its planning and strategies around inclusive practice for the whole organisation at all levels. So the checklist itself was then embedded into one of our club development programs, so that there was an opportunity for all clubs to access that, plus tapped into the incentives that were associated with the club development program, which I guess when you're talking about inclusion is a really good approach to take, so it feels like it's part of what the program's all about, and then therefore the club feels that creating an inclusive environment and acting on inclusion is a part of what they should be doing too. Yeah, so we got a really positive response to the checklist in the context of, an inclusion project. We launched it in 2009, and in that first year, which wasn't quite 12 months, we had an uptake of about 260 clubs from across Australia. So there was clubs from every state association that took it up in the first year, which was really positive. So over the next sort of 2.5 years up to 2011, we reached 360 clubs in total that completed the checklist over that time. And I guess one of the reasons for the good uptake was that it was built into a existing club development program. So you had clubs who were engaged in their own development already, taking it on as part of their process for improvement. It was available to clubs who weren't doing the club development program as well. So I think with the combination of that availability, with the incentives of the club development program, helped the uptake, which I think was really positive. So one of the things that we discovered with the information was that about just over half the clubs didn't actually have any members with disability or anyone participating in the club with disability at all. And I guess that's an interesting point to make, because sometimes when you set up an inclusive project, you tend to get uptake from the clubs or from the people that are actually doing the right thing or doing things well, who have people with disability engaged already. Whereas in this case we got a little over 50-50 split between clubs that had people with disability and clubs that didn't. So you can sort of take from that there is a large group of clubs who got involved that are willing to, make that little bit of extra effort to get involved and start to make some changes around the way they do things, or at least are interested in looking at what they can do, which I guess was one of the main reasons for the checklist in the first place, which was really positive. So we've already started using the information we've gathered with the checklist. we've used it to basically educate our planning and strategy nationally, as well as develop some targeted initiatives to assist clubs directly. After the first year, we actually did a report based on the information that we got back. We sent that information out to the participating clubs as well as the state associations, and broke the information down by what's happening in their state as well as nationally, so that they could get an indication of some of the things that are actually happening in their clubs. After that first year, we actually identified some key, action areas to work on. One of those was simply to increase the uptake over the next year, and from then until 2011, we actually did that, which was positive. The other one was to look at setting some national targets in terms of coach education. We identified that in our clubs there was limited numbers of coaches identifying with skills or confidence with skills around coaching people with disability. So one of the things we did was set a target for delivering coach education, and also set ourselves a challenge of looking at our coach education content and embedding inclusion principles and practice into the existing coaching accreditations, which we're also successful at doing, and there's continuing changes happening in our coach accreditation pathway at the moment. We also recognised that there was a need for really simple and accessible information, so that led to us creating a promotional and informative DVD about opportunities in the sport and the benefits of getting involved, as well as a inclusion tips fact sheet series, which is available online and in print now for clubs to just get access to get some basic information and build their confidence up, and those things are continually being looked at for improvement. One of the biggest things that we discovered through the information was that there was a pretty clear lack of connection between what a club does and the actual target market of people with disability in their community. So while clubs had really great programs or were in really accessible facilities, they didn't necessarily go and let anyone know about it. So they weren't promoting directly to disability or community organisations. They weren't letting their members and prospective members know that they had an inclusive culture or that they had opportunities in their programs. So that was something that we identified as being needed to be addressed. So we started down the road of developing some education around that, and we've just recently piloted a training package that covers off on some of the core inclusion principles, as well as how that clubs can then go and connect with a community organisation that's near them. One of the other things was that very, very few clubs were actually planning for inclusion. Some of them were doing certain things, but not very strategically, so there's some information available now to help clubs to plan for inclusion as well. So then, again in 2011, with the information that we've received in the years after the 2009 report, we've then again produced another report that's gone out to states and the participating clubs that has followed up from some of those action areas identified in 2009, and then looked at some of the other areas that we can continue to address from here on out. So one of the new key areas that we've seen is that there's a couple of impairment groups that have low participation rates, and those are people with a vision impairment and those people with hearing impairment. So we're looking at some targeted strategies to address the level of engagement by those people in the community. We also see a need for clubs to better communicate with their members about the inclusive opportunities and with prospective members, which follows on from some of that education that we're trying to do around communicating and getting in contact with the disability community. So we're looking at how we can capitalise on this from here on out. So what we're doing is evolving the checklist concept and taking it one step further. So rather than it simply being a snapshot of what's happening, we're looking to provide incentives for clubs to improve on what they're doing from here on out. We also look to move forward in a national strategy with a more educated view, having this data, which will allow us to, have a bit more impact and then measure, our successes more readily which I think is always beneficial for us as a national body. So this information from the checklist from 2009 through to 2011 basically acts as a bit of a platform for us to move forward from.